Hi, I'm Todd Rheingold, the hopeful aspirant. Welcome to another installment of I Got a Testimony. Last week we had Garry Crites with us. Garry is the Executive Director of NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and we both spoke very passionately about mental illness and the challenges that individuals face, not just in combating the illness, but in trying to successfully integrate within society. There are an estimated 40 million people, including myself, who suffer with these conditions: anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, post traumatic stress disorder, and other things. And from what everyone can see, we're all normally functioning adults. We work, we raise our families, we're good citizens. But what they don't realize is what goes on inside and the struggles that we face every day. We do our best, but it's very, very difficult at times. And as far as we've come as a society, we still have so far to go in terms of being sympathetic and empathetic. So we pick up where we left off from last week. Thank you for tuning in.
So, even me and anyone looking for work, you can say, oh yeah, I damaged my elbow about a month ago playing ball with my son, and but I should be okay typing on the keyboard. That's not going to be a problem. But if you say to your prospective boss, I have sleep issues because I have anxiety and PTSD, but I can power through with coffee, but I just wanted to let you know that, is it possible that we can work out some flexibility if necessary? The boss is going to say, sure. But then as soon as you're off the phone, no, you're crossed off the list because they want somebody who's going to be solid every day. And while I understand their perspective, their position, you've now disenfranchised 40 million estimated Americans.
And it actually is against the law, but you're right. It happens every single day. A person that has a mental health challenge may have to deal with it, may need some accommodations like anybody else might need accommodations, but that doesn't mean that they can't operate at the highest level. Our honorary walk chairperson this year, we do NAMI walks every year, which is one of our biggest events of the year where we raise money for mental health. But our honorary captain this year is Coach Joanne McCauley, Coach P, who up until just a few months ago was the head basketball coach at the Duke women's program. And remarkable because she was at the University of Maine. She went to Michigan State, and she got to the championship game in her first year. She came down to Duke for, I want to say, 13 years. She demonstrated that she is an amazing coach, and not too many people realized when she was going through all of those years that she has bipolar disorder.
Right.
But she demonstrated that you can have a diagnosable mental illness and still operate at the very highest levels. Now, one of the things that I love is that nearly every one of my staff either has a diagnosable mental illness or they have loved ones that are. They can run circles around me as far as the amount of work they get done, the depth of insight that they have. Certainly, if they had the choice, if I have a person that suffers from severe depression, they would prefer not to have it. Of course, we all would, but that doesn't mean that they can't function at the highest level,
Sure.
and they do.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out. It's so important because for people who may be listening who are in a position to hire, if you're an HR person or a boss who hires their employees directly like that, keep this in mind. Because again, we always lead with political correctness, but that's not the honest truth of what we believe in and who we are. So let me give you an anchor, an actual truth. As Garry kind of just hinted at, the people who have these conditions are way more sensitive to what other people might be suffering from. It takes one to know one. And so what do you get if you hire people who have these challenges? You get an extremely compassionate person, someone with an empathy that goes beyond what others might have. How would that work in your organization? Person could be a team builder. That's why I'm very good in sales, because I can read people super fast and I know what they're interested in and what they fear. It's because I'm empathic. Why am I empathic? Because I suffer from the anxiety and the PTSD. I'm wired that way. So even when I see someone on television, I can say, I can see that they got a challenge that they're not even talking about right now. Just by the way they think about the world, the way they approach the world. That doesn't make us a liability. It makes us a huge plus, a huge contributor if you choose to see it that way. And if you say, okay, here's our organizational structure. What could we possibly do with this person who has this extra sensory, extra special talent? You know how I relate? I understand the other side, Gary. I'm a parent. So if my son falls in love with a young woman who has financial challenges, emotional problems, mental problems, I'm going to say to him, you got a million other women. Choose from that pool. Don't choose from this pool, because you're going to have all these extra hurdles to overcome. So I understand the other side's position. The way that we can overcome is to shift their way of thinking. And the way to do that is with an anchor, which is, look, don't say, kind of like an affirmative action thing, I have to put up with this or the government's going to be mad. Instead, say, these types of people have increased sensitivity and empathy. How can we use them to the best of their ability and our ability in our organization?
It will never change until we start having leaders that are willing to start not only see parity between physical and mental health issues, but that have the vision of how to lead someone who has a mental health condition. I had a friend years ago. She was a professional French horn player, and her teacher said to her, "You are a really good French horn player, but you will never be great until you suffer."
Mm,
That there's something about the suffering that brings out that depth and so forth. And I think that it's in a similar thing. You may be you may be a supervisor at work, you may be a leader at your work, you may be an executive director, and you may be a good one. You will never be a great one until you have a sensitivity to suffering. You may be a pastor, but you will never be a great pastor until you have
sure.
sensitivity to suffering. Uh, Pastors that get up and act like I have it all together, my kids have it all together, they think that they're leading the congregation in the right way. What they're doing is demoralizing the congregation. What we need within the church, what we need within business are leaders that are willing to be vulnerable, that are willing to say, I grapple with this. My staff know that if they call me up and they say, I need a mental health day, I am just having a bad day, no questions asked, they get it.
Mm,
They no questions asked. If they When the pandemic hit, when some of them are mothers of small children and so forth, and said, "What do I do?" And I said, you are so talented, you can do your job just as well from home as you can from here. You go be with your kids, because this job is only one priority in the midst of a ton of priorities, and in the final analysis it's not even close to the top priority. You go home, help your kid, do your work from the house, and you know what, it has never affected what we do. um, they know that no matter what they're going through, that I have their back,
well, I'll tell you,
that I'm going to cheer them on. I'm going to be their biggest fan. I love to go to board meetings and tell them how great my staff are. And we've accomplished some really remarkable things, I think. And I have board members will say, "Well, Gary, congratulations." And I'll say, "Don't congratulate me. I'm not the one that did it. I have the best staff in the world. They were the ones that did it. I'm just been given the blessing of being able to be alongside of them."
absolutely. You know, that scripture, if I get it right, when Peter kind of admonishes Jesus for washing the feet, and he says, even the Son of Man came to serve, not to be served.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that to be a leader, you have to know what it's like to work in the trenches. In my last position, when I had that last altercation with my abusive manager, I said to him, because we were doing talking points, and I hate that. And I said, I want you to understand something. You're in management. I said, you do realize you manage people. You don't manage machines. And I said, and you're not a people person. You get frustrated if someone asks a question, if someone makes a mistake. I said, why are you in management? like you're a bully. And you should, when someone is confused or making a mistake, you should be excited that you now get the opportunity to educate that person and to actually see the growth and say, when he started, he didn't know how to do this, but because he was a hard worker and I was able to work with him, look what he's doing now. And a good leader will be excited when they see someone who was once under them, who's now exceeded them. They will be excited to see that their student has now become a teacher and a leader. That's what a real leader is. Instead of somebody who says, well, who else is pretty talented? And I got to make sure they know who's boss. I got to make sure, Todd doesn't think too much of himself because he might want my job. And again, it's just, there's so many factors. We come from the nexus in this conversation about people who are challenged with mental health problems, but it's from so many different angles. And we've also focused a lot on work because people spend at least 1/3 of their lives at work. And if you really look at the biggest stressors in someone's life, it's their home life, raising kids, marriage, but it's their work. And I mean, that's another scripture in the Old Testament is one of the things man is so important to man is to be happy in his work. And so I stress it a lot because it's been a problem. And I honestly believe, Garry, that because I suffer from like PTSD and anxiety, I don't look like it though. And so if I'm reacting to something I'm feeling on the inside, I don't realize what I'm communicating on the outside, what my face looks like. And somebody else who doesn't know could perceive it completely differently. And they see me as I'm separating myself or I'm distracted, but I'm not. I'm not in a bad way. I'm focused on me because I don't feel right. I'm trying to get right and I'm trying to fit in and I'm saying to myself, what can I do to do better? And I can't have these feelings because it's going to get in the way of me doing a good job. That's what's going through me. But I think other people sense something's up, but instead of giving me the benefit of the doubt, they look at it and say, oh, he wants to separate himself. He thinks he's special. And it's like, it's the exact opposite. I just wish there was a way that we could give full disclosure and not be penalized for it.
Yeah. A couple related things related to being in a position of a leadership. One, I am completely committed to the concept of servant leadership. That I am called to show my leadership by my willingness to serve, which means I don't ask my staff to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. I am never too big to do a menial job. I, I'm a firm believer. I used to be a pastor. I'm a firm believer that seminaries, they offer theology, they offer Greek, they offer all these. I'm a firm believer that seminaries should offer courses in how to clean floor drains in the basement of the church, because sometimes as a leader, you're going to be called on to be a servant. The other thing which is related, I believe that the most effective leaders are those people who can help their staff believe in themselves and are willing to do whatever they can. I used to have a sign in a previous job. I used to have a sign. It was by quote by Richard Branson from Virgin Airlines that said, "Most companies say focus on the customers. I don't believe that. I say focus on your staff. They'll take care of your customers." And I had a supervisor that said, "I don't believe that at all. I don't worry about staff. I'm worrying about the customer." And I'm thinking, well, you will never be effective as a leader then. My role is to cheer my staff on. And that doesn't mean that there aren't times when I say you need to work on this or that kind of stuff, but they need to know that I will be the biggest cheerleader in the corner. And the greatest thing that I can do is to help them succeed at what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And you can't do that by berating somebody.
But I'll give you, it's funny, this just happened. These two separate instances happened in the last week, which again, give a great illustration of management, lack thereof, leadership. I'm going to try not to name the two grocery stores, but so I go into one I usually do most of my shopping at one because I like it. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think the meat is fresher and all that stuff. And I do think they're better at customer service, but their deli meat is just way too expensive. It's like $5 more a pound. So I went to this other grocery store, like 3 p.m, and the guy was there, but he was closing up the deli. And he said, we're closed. And I said, it's 3 p.m. And he goes, yeah, I've gone over my 40 hours and I'm not allowed to work overtime. And I said, so you don't have anybody else coming in? And he said, no. So here's the thing. My son was with me. So he always criticizes me. And I said,
That's what sons do.
I said, you got to understand something. Things happen. It's not his fault. The reason I'm upset is because he didn't care. He didn't say, hey, sir, I'm so sorry, but I'm just not allowed. And, let me see if I can get somebody else to help you. He didn't do that. He looked at me and said, sorry, deli's closed. I went over my 40 hours. And he wasn't at all empathetic. So I find the manager and I said to her, so your deli's closed? She goes, yes, And I said, there's no one who can help me. And she said, sir, people who slice the meat have to be certified. And I could see her attitude. So I just left it. And then my son was like, Dad, let's go. So we got outside and I explained to him again. And I said, I could be wrong, but she's a manager. So she probably knows how to operate that slicer herself. I would imagine that to be a manager, you got to know how to do some of the jobs like cashier, cutting. I could be wrong. But the point is, she didn't care either. She didn't say, well, actually, sir, it's 3. We should have somebody here by 6. If you want to come back, I'm very sorry. I apologize. Something like that. She didn't care. I go to the other grocery store a couple days later. They were advertising Progresso soup, 99 cents a can. It's usually $2.25. And when they do a sale like that, I buy as many as I'm allowed. So I get the cans of soup. I go up and they ring them up, and they don't ring them up at 99 cents. So I said, and I go to customer service, and the lady goes, oh, and she looks at my phone and she says, you see this little box here? It's smaller print. That applies to that soup. She goes, so it's March 9th through the whatever, but those particular items aren't on sale until Thursday. And I said, oh. I said, all right, I guess I have to come back tomorrow. I said, I can put the cans back. And the manager came by and said, what's the problem? And she told her, and she goes, she waves at it. So I thought she meant he's out of luck. And the lady said to me, no. She told me to just make it right. So it took her a few minutes. She had to go in the computer and specially mark it down just for me, because the manager's perspective was, it's going to be on sale tomorrow. He's a valued customer. Yeah, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but you know what? Do it anyway. Well, where do you think I'm going to shop?
Yeah, that's so good. That's such a great point. And we've talked about mental health and we've talked about work, but there actually is a real connection between the two. And to me, here's the connection. One of the things that I tell my staff on a regular basis and my board is, if we ever forget the fact that we are called to serve people, we might as well shut the doors. That's what ties these two worlds together, whether it be as me as a leader at an organization or me with a daughter with mental health issues. If we ever forget that we are called to serve, we are called to heal, we are called to empathize, we are called to be gentle, we are called, if we ever forget that, then we might as well close our door, because we've completely lost why we exist. And the same is true in the church.
Sure.
The same is true in the church. If we ever become so fixated on what the building looks like, on what the denomination says, then we might as well close our doors.
Right. We're human beings. We're designed socially, and to think otherwise is to be headed in the wrong direction. And one of the reasons we are headed in the wrong direction, and have been for some time, is we've lost sight of the fact that we are here to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I can tell you, as somebody who's been in sales for a while, 3 different industries, and always been a top performer, I know I have to sell something, but I don't lead with that. I genuinely like people, and I like learning about them and having a conversation. I have a conversation first. The person knows just as well as I do I have something to sell, but I make the conversation. It's not forced. But I read them because I can tell if they're busy, if they're looking off, and I know that I can't have a long conversation. But by the time I'm ready to talk about what I'm selling, they already like me. And if whoever's watching this, we're all consumers. If you ask yourself, when you buy something, you don't buy it based on your rational thinking, you buy it based on your emotional thinking. If you have a particular ice cream that you like, but the other one's on sale, you might buy it, but you're not going to feel good about it. You're going to feel better when the one you like is on sale. We buy brands and we buy things, it's an emotional decision. So when you like the company, when you like the salesperson, how many times I've been told, like, I don't even want that in here. I can't fit that in here. I don't want to be bothered with it, but I like you and I want to give you a chance. So I'll tell you what, let's make some room over here. We can put this here. It's all about relationships. Don't kid yourself. It's not just
So
people who
true.
are, it's not people who are empathetic, people who have mental health challenges. Everything's a relationship. So Gary, I wanted to ask you, you did indicate how you deal with, the stresses of life, but if we could really drill down on that, when you have an exceptionally challenging day, when just from morning till night, everything's kind of gone wrong, and we all have our breaking point where we're like, what do you do to get back to that good place?
That's a really great question. It's a hard one because I tend towards depression. And so it's really hard for me. But there are a few go-to things. Um, I do believe in the power of prayer. Uh, Um, I believe that God loves me and cares about every details of my life. So whether it be the God box, like I talked to you earlier, or whether it's just prayer. I mean, when Bethany has been going through some real struggles, my daughter, there are some times that I'll look at Marianne, my wife, and say, let's just spend some time in prayer. That is a huge thing. Another thing that I do is I'm an introvert, so I don't naturally talk about my problems, but I have a couple people that I trust implicitly that I know that I can go to them and just lay it out, and they're not going to try to fix things for me. They're just allowing me to dump. And then the other thing that I do sometimes, there are times that I just need to get away.
Mhm.
I need to get away. I talked about my 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, but even beyond that, there are some times that if I'm having a bad day at work, and there are not many of them, but if I'm having a bad day at work, um, I will take off and say the rest of the afternoon I'm just going to spend for me. But what is more likely to happen, oddly enough, is my staff are really good to each other, including me. They will come to me and they will scold me lovingly. And they'll say, Gary, you always talk to us about self-care. You always talk to us that we need to take care of ourselves. You're not taking care of yourself. Now go home. Get out of here. You need some time to you. And just knowing that I have the permission just to get away and to get my life back in balance is really, really huge. And then finally, uh, there are resources that I know that can help me, whether it be a counselor, whether it be some of the resources that I know about here at NAMI. I was in a family to family class with my wife for a couple months. Those kind of resources just to regain some balance in my life.
Mhm. Okay. And for those who may have tuned in a little bit later, if you want to reiterate from the perspective of, for someone who's going into that free fall, and they're in that, the beginning part of that, like, oh my God, and they want to reach out to one of these resources, where should they start?
What I would suggest is if they want to know what kind of things are available to them, uh, what kind of resources, I think the best place to start is by calling our NAMI North Carolina helpline. And it's a number where I have a manager and we have a number of interns that are really good, not only at listening, but saying, okay, here are some resources that are available, and knowing that the resources that may be available to you in Buncombe County may be different than the resources that are available to you in Wake County. They're really good at helping you find resources. Again, that number is 1-800-451-9682. And they're really good. They can get you the resources that you need, or put you in touch with the person who can get you those resources.
Fantastic. And then lastly, is there anything that you thought we might talk about or that you would like to add that we haven't yet talked about?
Well, one that I sort of touched on, one of the areas that I have been very interested in is the relationship between religious faith and mental health. Um, and I think that we in the church have done a spectacularly bad job in this. And what I would really want to encourage is for pastors and leaders in churches to step up to the plate and not allow stigma in their church to treat somebody who has a mental health condition as if they have some sort of disease, and that if they just spent more time with God, they just prayed it off, they would be better. Um, I really want leaders of the church, and so what I am doing as an ordained clergy, even though I don't serve a parish anymore, is I'm developing relationships with leaders in churches around the
Great.
state, where I can go into them. The average pastor in the average church, when he or she was in seminary, took one class in pastoral counseling, which is just enough to make you very, very dangerous.
Mm.
So what I'm doing, I don't want to go in and teach people how to counsel, but I want to go in and work with ministers around the state and church leaders around the state for what are the things that you should be looking out for? How do you know when to refer this to someone else? What are the resources that are available in your area? So that's a huge thing for me to make that connection between faith and mental health a lot more clear.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that. Gary, thank you so much for doing this.
It is my pleasure, Todd. This
Yeah,
has been a real blessing.
thank you so much. To my audience, this is Todd Rheingold, the hopeful aspirant. Let's all aspire to reach higher and stay inspired. God bless.